where it's probably trying to.
Hello, friends. Wait, we're supposed to do our
You're
unbreak
supposed
first.
to unbreak. Okay.
Dun, da,
We
da,
don't
da,
need to.
dun, da, 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 dun. Okay,
See how?
that's Lori and I'm Corey.
Welcome to our Yule Time Tidings live stream.
Or so it seems to be that I titled it.
Yes, it is Winter Solstice
Yes,
2024.
Which is the beginning of Yule, and I've got my Secret Superman 30 Years of Glory shirt on.
Yes.
Other than that, I'm staying warm.
Yes, in case you don't know, this is...
Of course, there's 0 viewers according to this. I don't know if that's true or not.
See or not. It is Winter Solstice.
Our chat bot says that... I don't know if it's connected.
Okay.
Do.
We will see.
I failed to send the message.
Ah. Well, that's not good.
Okay, bot works.
Bot works, not us.
All right. So if anyone's here, you should probably post a message so we can see whether
Or not.
we did this right.
Yeah.
Oh, there's someone.
Oh,
Terrible
there.
sauce.
Terrible sauce is there.
Yeah,
Yeah, there we go.
Yay, we do
Good.
it, people. Hooray.
We were worried that we were not quite connected correctly, but we are, apparently. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating.
Gold Yule.
Yeah.
And Happy Hanukkah.
Yes.
Happy Hanukkah.
And a Happy New Year, because that's also on the list of things that we are.
Yeah, because we won't be back again until the 4th, which is after the New Year.
Yes, we will see you next year.
A whole new year. I guess I'm supposed to tilt this up more.
A little bit, maybe so. There, Sean gets to be seen a little bit better.
Sean and us.
Yes.
Shanaki Records.
So,
Okay, well, that was the stream. Thanks,
Yes.
all.
Yes, last time we were gone to Guadalajara, Mexico, which is why we missed the last stream.
Guadalajara, in Jalisco, Mexico.
Very good, very good. You got it to scan vaguely.
And contrary to appearances, I actually, for the first time in the last, 10, 15 years, actually came home from a vacation without getting sick.
Amazing.
We are healthy. We are well and bringing the holidays. Hey, OSU is here.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yes, I am wearing my holiday shirt.
Yeah, she's got a her so-called ugly Christmas shirt.
My
I think
ugly
it's actually,
Christmas shirt.
I think it's actually kind of pretty.
It is. It's got the hero on it, and it's got the
Antwerps.
Antwerps, and
It's got the poster that starts out the whole adventure.
Sauruses, and it's got a hole and run up Meeps on the top, so it's really very cute. And I think it was on Redbubble, but I can't tell you for certain because I can't find it right
Well,
now.
my theory on optimized immune systems is that maybe if I do enough of these trips and get exposed to enough of different germs in different places, then eventually I'll build up some resistance to them.
Happy winter solstice.
Well, we also all got all of our immunizations before we went.
Yes, well, in theory. Yes, it is a very, it's a hazy day outside, but it's a nice balmy or at least comfortable 60, 70 degrees.
So it's a hazy kind of winter.
Yeah.
Yes, you are Stardrop. Welcome.
Ah, very good. You're actually awake for this one, for part of it, at any rate.
I barely made it because I was busy fooling around in World of Warcraft's new Silent Isle just before the stream.
Yeah. And I was, looking at the photos that I have done over the years from the Ireland trip, which was just a couple of months ago, and posting those to Facebook. So, at any rate, I hope you're all having a good time and a good season as we count down to the end of 2024 and look to a new year full of all sorts of new stuff that we have to deal with.
It's a shame we don't show off our living room and stuff in here. Lori's been, as usual, happily decorating while I paid bills and clean and washed the dishes and so on. And so she gets to make Christmas cookies and cook feasts and decorate.
Yes. I made 3 kinds of cookies this year so far. Been going through the old Sierra Christmas cards on the Internet Archive. I didn't know there were some.
Yeah, there was a thing. That was a thing they did, and some of them, a lot of them were animated.
Okay, well, if Brainiac would give us a link, we could show them off, because I don't remember them.
I remember a couple of them anyway.
Yeah, well.
But we've got the poinsettias. I'm just looking to my right into the living room, and I can see there's the, traditional red and green decorations and flowers.
There we go. Archive. He's got the link.
All right.
So
Let's see what terrible things happen when we do that. Okay, so it comes up here. That probably means this should be here.
Okay.
I had meant to. Let's see if I do a desktop. Yes, that works.
Okay. All right. Let's see those pictures.
Okay. Yeah, I'll leave it on desktop. Okay. Yeah. And we have the Radio Shack Christmas card, 1987. Sierra Christmas card.
Just click on them and bring them up. That's what I was.
I don't know if the Radio Shack one is Sierra or not, but we could maybe. Okay, IBM Chaplin Christmas card.
Huh. Well,
by IBM.
Okay. Oh, well, that's classy.
Music. Let's turn it on.
And
Type a letter.
Yes. No. Does it actually take it? I thought it was a video.
Nope. Downloading game metadata.
Get out of that. Get out of that. You did not want to do that. You just want to show.
All right. Here's the Sierra Christmas card, 1986.
Don't bother.
What?
Don't bother with that one either. It's all because it's a thing.
Maybe.
It's a living Christmas card. We do not want made a David from a.
It has to get this. This is the way it works, dear.
I just wanted a card. I didn't want a video. Okay.
Return.
We will press return.
They are all videos.
Hard drive installable. Okay. Enter your own message. To actually run the programs, Corey's doing the right thing. Yeah, I didn't think we were going to run them.
There we go.
Oh, isn't that exciting? There we go.
This is our 1986 technology.
Isn't that?
This is pre Heroes Quest. Heroes Quest came out in '89. I started working at Sierra in '88.
So this is really very cool. Yes, congratulations. They have done in a program what you could have done in a GIF years ago.
Yeah.
But a little more fancy than GIFs got, because GIFs were huge when they went that many frames. Okay, cool.
All right.
There's the 1990.
There's a 80. Okay, the 1990. The Seasoned Professional.
Ooh.
That's what we were. We were seasoned
professionals in 1990.
Click to begin.
Okay. Let's see.
DOSBox.
DOSBox. Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that professional looking?
It looks like a Bill Davis style. Was he there in 90?
Oh, maybe. Yes, he definitely was. That is definitely a Bill Davis style piece of art.
I don't.
Shamrocks falling down. I see. Well, now we have a Christmas tree. Oh, I see. Here we go again.
This actually reminds me of the.
Okay.
Oh, I see. They had a St. Patrick. And
yes.
Then
now we have him dressed as Cupid.
Killing. People.
Killing with his arrows. Yes. Various people.
Was that the hero?
Looks like it, but. All right, this is definitely amusing.
This is fun, and we should have, however, had the
groundhog. Oh, okay.
A little slow getting into it, but the idea's funny along the way.
Yeah. All right.
That looks sort of.
Finally get the thing right. And how wrong can he be? Okay.
Yes, that's it.
All right. Action. He laid an egg. Okay.
He's got a basket.
All right. There we go. He's going to hop all over the stage.
This is advanced animation. You can see this is already more sophisticated than the 1986 version.
Yes, this is a real video. producer Ken Williams, directed and designed by Bill Davis, which we sort of all could tell if you knew Bill Davis's style. Randy McNeil did it, yes, and there was music.
Yep.
We just didn't hear it.
Okay, so Randy McNeil did some stuff, and I'm
Okay.
um,
Are you going to bring it back to us?
I'm going to bring up the Moby Games. I'm going to look up Randy McNeil because
Okay.
I know the name, but I didn't know him well. Randy McNeil, probably this one. He had 2 L's.
Okay, he did
Front page sports
Rama.
baseball.
He did Quest for Glory 2 Trial by Fire programming.
Really?
Right. He must have been, well...
Wasn't actually on our team for that.
No, because we were small teams at that point.
Equal Quest, except other goose. So it was their, contemporary with our first years
He
at
did
Sierra.
the Amiga conversion for Mixed Up Mother Goose. Okay.
Okay.
And special thanks to. Okay.
All right. Well, that wasn't what I was looking at. I was thinking he worked on like Manhunter or one of those.
No.
That's the Murray
That's
brothers.
the Murray brothers, yes.
And who did Gold Rush?
I don't know.
Gold Rush had a similar name, I thought. Game Gold Rush. Sentient Software. Credits. Michael Berlin and Michael Berlin with Harry Wilker.
Okay.
That might not be the same game.
Well,
That was
it
82.
is. Well,
88.
88. Okay,
Here's the
there
right
it
one.
is, the right one.
All right. Gold Rush. Here's the Sierra one. Ken
There.
McNeil and Doug McNeil. But that
The
was
McNeil
Randy
brothers,
McNeil.
yes.
That's
This
the
is the
McNeil
McNeil brothers.
As opposed to the Murray
Right,
brothers.
yes.
All right. So I knew McNeil sounded familiar. And I do not know if they have any relationship with Randy McNeil, but
Chris
seems
Iden
likely.
was there, and Jeff Stevenson and Robert Heitman were back there too,
Yep.
working on it then. So, at any rate, we're going through nostalgia here, but
when I first started at Sierra, I interviewed with Jeff Stevenson and Chris Iden and Robert Eric Heitman, more commonly known as Bob Heitman. Dale was Dale's last name. Anyway, Jeff was the genius behind the SCI system and the object-oriented system that was SCI and the whole programming thing. Robert Heitman was kind of the graphics and animation expert who got all the different graphic standards to work. And he was the nitty-gritty systems programmer person, really. But also had a stage background, had been active in theater at University of Michigan, and brought that knowledge of choreography and stage management and so on to the company. So he was my first boss at Sierra. And later on, I worked for him again when he had his own company, and then he worked for me and went back and forth that way. So the tough manager, very did not suffer fools at all. You had to be a workaholic like him to work with him, but great guy. Anyway, 256 color versions. One does have actual speech. It says,
when
I
was
ran
that?
earlier.
Yeah, interesting.
It's programmed to load it up. Yep.
All right.
All right, very interesting.
Show off our Christmas card for this year.
Oh, our Christmas card for this year. Just bring it up on the.
On the it's a loading screen, isn't it? It's on your SD break. It's
Oh,
on
okay.
the break.
Yeah, we'll go on break. There's our
There.
Christmas card.
Yes, that's the easy way to do it. That's this year's Christmas card.
And these are all characters from Summer Days of Feo's Adventure.
Yes.
And let's see, that's Sergei on the left. Was Sergei, but
It's Sergi, actually.
Sergei.
Sergi.
I think it's Sergei. And then Leon, the wheelchair.
Uh-huh.
And that is what's her name?
Maria.
Maria. Okay. Then up in the tree
Is Percival Parcival Peterson II.
And then, of course, we have a Feo at the base of the tree, trimming it up. Then we have
Chang.
I want to say Cho because I'm in my mind, and we saw some of the Harry Potter movies recently. Chang. And then finally,
we have Charlotte.
Charlotte Roos.
Yes. And this card is available as a download.
From our
in theory.
From our Patreon.
Yes.
So I get to advertise our Patreon.
Yes, you too can have this for a wallpaper.
I should do this. So I'm just kind of, no, not that one. There's a different one I want to do.
Okay.
Okay, if we went to the
share post. Okay.
Most recent Happy Holidays
there
post.
There we go.
Do I have it? Yes.
Yes, you do have too much.
Okay. If you go to our Patreon, which is there, this is a public post that is about the streams. This is a little bit recursive, but it has this picture in the post. But down at the bottom,
you're showing us. So
I'm showing us. That's right.
Well, you could have.
Anyway, there are. Okay, we'll go over there. Yeah. Here's the post. Happy Holidays 2024, with the that image. But there are two attachments that you may download, which is an 8x10, suitable for framing version of this.
Suitable for printing.
Suitable for printing and framing. And then the...
then your one that's for your wallpaper.
Yeah, and the wallpaper version of it. So these are by J. Puig Selwood at Lori's direction.
Yes. And if you bring down your images on that page, lower all your windows, you could show the one from the previous year.
It just so happens my screen
happens
background.
To be up there, yes.
That's just my screensaver.
With the same characters in a different pose and different situation. With
inside the castle.
Inside the castle this time, and they're wearing different clothes.
Less snow in there.
There is less snow, but there is magic.
So our characters will change their outfits constantly during the course of the game?
Not in the course of the game, sorry. No.
I
didn't want to do.
It's invention also. It's a workaholic boss, but it mostly works out as I'm the same.
Yes, that's a good combination.
There's an interesting phenomenon that goes on with probably all creative businesses, but certainly in the computer game industry, is that everybody knows that game developers work long hours. 10-hour days, normal, 50-hour weeks, normal, 60-hour weeks during crunch. What the bosses don't get is they think they can enforce that by telling people they have to work 60 hours. What really happens is that people take an enormous amount of pride in their work and frustration if something doesn't quite work the way it's supposed to. So programmers and artists work all those overtime, and designers work all those overtime hours because they want to get it just right. Or they at least want to get to a break point at the end of the day. And so since the jobs are always harder than we think they are, we end up working a lot of overtime. But it's workaholic, it's just basically the love of the work you're doing. And if you try to compel that by telling people, okay, you've got to work a 60, 70-hour week, that was what happened at the last year of Quest for Glory 5 development.
And 4.
It was worse than 4. It was for like 2 months.
4 it was for the last half of the year because it was always overdue.
Yeah.
So 4 was 4 months of it. Straight.
I would have said 3, but okay, 4 months. Basically a full year on 5. And that was largely due to management saying, we got to get this game out on schedule. So guys got to have to work harder. And the problem is that doesn't work. People work harder if they care about what they're doing and they see the need to work. If they're told they have to put in 12-hour days, they put in 8 hours a day screwing around and 4 hours of real work.
Which is probably what the majority winds up doing.
Yeah, they brought in a racing game that people were playing endlessly in the programmer room. And on.
There have always been people, playing games during work hours, and there were
Some of the
always
earlier games they're playing
certain
Doom.
games that you knew once that came into things that productivity sort of went down.
So if I recall, it was around 1990 or so that 89, 90, 91, somewhere in there, that several great games came out the same year. And we had like Civilization, we had Secret of Monkey Island, we had SimCity, all came out, and those ate up enormous amounts of developer hours playing the games instead of getting the work done. But in other sense, it's research. You're finding out how game balance works and what other people are doing graphically and
We would have
simulation-wise.
Amiga demos whenever Amiga game came out. And we all went over to the room that had like 2 Amigas in it for the whole for Sierra. And
Well, the first year I was at Sierra, we were over in the so-called professional building, the Redwood building, and one side of the room was the intern who had an Amiga, and he would bring in things like, was it King of the City, King something, Cinemaware.
the
Games,
Cinemaware games.
and show them off an Amiga, and that continued. Go ahead.
Cinemaware games were the most graphically advanced of all the games out there. Their gameplay wasn't always there, but their visuals were wonderful for the time.
But yeah, the long hours. There was the thing about the EA widow complaining about her husband being forced to work mandatory overtime and so on. But the real long hours in the game industry were always because people weren't done yet and they wanted to get to a break point.
Or they wanted to play Rogue in off hours when they should have been going home instead.
I wonder who she could be referring to. That was pre-Sierra.
Yes. Oh man, the
My Rogue
strategy
days.
builder games that never end always got me. Yes, they were something.
Yeah, so I was doing basically Unix programming, systems programming and such for several years. And then they had Rogue in there, so I would play that. But when Lori and I decided to do our desktop publishing software for the Atari ST, that's why we got into the ST. And at that point, Dungeon Master came out, which was amazing. And they came out with a version of Rogue for the Atari ST that was one of the few cases of a commercial release of a public domain game being really more fun and more beautiful than the original.
Yeah, because it had little graphic characters and things instead of
letters of the alphabet.
ASCII characters. It had real characters, and that's when I got hooked on the game because it was visually appealing. So we spent lots of hours playing Rogue.
Rogue was a great game. I was the first person at Olivetti to win Rogue, but I did cheat by Rogue standards because I did what they call save scumming. Rogue, when you when you load a game, deletes the saved game. So you're not supposed to be able to keep multiple copies of it, but in practice, you just copy the save game, and then if something goes wrong, you recopy it.
I see.
So that was how
But Rogue, of course, is the game that you always started from zero and went on. So you couldn't save it in the game proper.
And it was designed to mostly kill you off.
And you also had a random generator that would either give you a good game or a terrible game if you were, unlucky.
So there's for those 3 or 4 of you that might not have actually played Rogue.
Played that in that heyday.
Basically, it's a dungeon crawl where you are. They call you a rogue, but you're basically your generic D&D character with, fighting skills, and you can use magic items. I guess you didn't actually have any spells.
You didn't in that one. No, you had items.
Yeah, you had items that you would pick up. And you would pick up a potion, and it would say it's a red potion or a blue potion with no other indication of what it does. And the only way you could figure out what it was to either use an identify scroll on it, and you had to go through all the scrolls and try them randomly
Find out which one
until you found out which one was identified. But usually had more identify scrolls than anything. Or simply try the potion and see what it does. And the red potion, each playthrough of the game would randomly be a different potion, but within a playthrough was always the same thing. So it might be a potion of warmth that was one of the most important ones that uh, restored your strength after Rattlesnake or whatever the original monster was that would drain strength points from you. There's a potion of gain strength, also very important.
Yes.
And various things. The scroll of identify, as you mentioned, the most powerful scroll was the
Kill monster.
yeah, it was come on. So there was a term for Armageddon, effectively, but you could specify one of the monster types in the game, and it would eliminate that monster from the game. So if you decided that the rust monster was the most dangerous, you could
the rust monster took your armor.
Yeah, it
away.
would gradually destroy your armor. You could remove all rust monsters, or you could remove all basilisks, or whatever.
Yeah. The dragon, the one thing
the
that
dragon
nobody
was so
could
deadly.
beat. Yeah. So yeah. NetHack was my favorite original roguelikes.
I found NetHack too complicated.
Yeah.
I liked the simplicity of Rogue, that there was a relatively small set of items, relatively small set of rules, and NetHack basically tried to turn it into more of the real D&D experience. There was a lot more mystery and a lot more variation to it, and I just found it wasn't as compelling. So there's something about simplicity and straightforwardness and consistency can really make a game more addictive.
In a sense. And well done. When we were first proposing Road to Redemption and being a simple game, we were proposing it, we were thinking it along the lines of a roguelike game where it would be generated rooms. And so that you could have a game that would, always be different when you played it. But we didn't really want the rogue rules, which is the rule that you're going to die every time you play the game.
Yeah, permadeath is a major part of a rogue game, so we didn't necessarily want to do that. Lorian Wise mentions that Rogue on the Atari ST and Maze Wars were the big features at the early Hackers conferences. There was a book called Hackers by Stephen Levy. About a third of that is actually devoted to the early days of Sarah Online and Ken and Roberta Williams. But it was talking about basically the early days of the personal computer revolution. And there was a series, a couple of the people that were mentioned in the book got together and started up Hackers conferences. And Lorian went to a couple of those. I went to a few of those. So they would have the demo room. And one of the features of the Atari ST is it was one of the early computers to have MIDI as a major feature. But you could use MIDI cables to network together multiple Atari STs.
Yes,
and then you could play Maze Wars, where you're going through shooting down happy faces, which were the other players in the maze. So it's basically like an early, a simplified version of Doom.
Yeah.
Rogue.
Land Wars.
LAN Wars, LAN Wars.
Yeah.
Rogue, Maze Wars, and then just a little later on was Dungeon Master, was originally on the Atari ST, and that was just an amazing tour de force of one of the best D&D style games ever made. Unfortunately, it was
for that time period.
Yeah. Well, I'd go back.
It had no story, so therefore it can't be a D&D game.
All right.
It can be a good, well-balanced game.
The problem, catching lightning in a bottle twice is really hard, and Dungeon Master 2 did not live up to the hype of the first one. They decided that players needed to advance and have tougher and tougher challenges, so they started where the first game left off, and it was just too hard for most players.
Yeah, it's really tough doing game series. It's trying to keep the balance so that you're challenging, but at the same time, not overtaxing the abilities of your players.
So that was one of the lessons for us, and the Wizardry did the same thing with Wizardry 2. I think Night of Diamonds, I think, was a continuation of Wizardry 1 and trying to up the ante. And when you've already got the Tilt-A-Wait spell, which is basically a meteor storm at the beginning of the game, that kind of makes it hard to balance. By game 3, Legacy of Logamen, they realized that that wouldn't work, and so they started you over at the beginning. Um, and that was kind of frustrating that you were once again a weak
Yeah,
character.
it takes all the thrill out of the game of having a saved character, which was what inspired Quest for Glory series. And
Although I would say that all 3 of those were excellent
yeah,
games.
we tried to do it such that you always felt like you were progressing without feeling like you were starting at ground zero, but still giving you a challenge through all the games. It would have been fun if you could go back to the old, back to Spielberg with your character from Game 5, and, you're just smiling at the Sauruses who are trying to get through your armor because they can't even touch you. That would have been amusing. And if we, had a living, breathing world, which is what we would do nowadays if we had the billions of dollars it takes to do that, we would let you do that.
Yeah, I forget what the name of it, but there's a mode that certain games have that basically lets you, after you've completed the game, go back and just treat it as a sandbox, and that certainly would have been fun to have. So what we did with Quest for Glory was also inspired by some of the early D&D campaigns that Lori and I played in, because in the early days, people were not in a hurry to get superpowered, and at least in the campaigns we played in, they went very slowly. So it might take you weeks to go from level 1 to level 2. And it might take you a year to get up to like level 8 or 10 with your characters. So we did that with Quest for Glory, where we started out with relatively less powerful spells and, gradually adding more and more to your spell book as you go along. The New Game Plus, Ribbons of Intention, so that's called.
Okay.
And we actually had some requests for that in Hero U, but weren't ready to do that. We had a hard enough time as an indie getting the game out at all. But anyway, so the idea in Quest for Glory is that your power level goes up each game, and we tried to do it gradually so that you felt like you were, advancing and becoming more powerful without, getting to Superman status in the first or second game.
Right. So that's a tough thing to balance. But we considered it from the beginning, knowing that's the challenge we had to make.
The game balance in Quest for Glory was very intentional, but also mostly luck, because there was never really enough time to, tweak it and play with it and test it. I ran simulations and stuff to see, what monster stats do we have in order to give the player a challenge without making it too hard. And amazingly enough, it seems to mostly work. A lot of luck in that.
Arlo says that another thing I noticed that in 1 there are a few negative remarks about the hero's looks, whereas in future games he's called handsome and women flirt with him. Was there a creative reason for that, or was it just coincidence? I'd have to say that a lot of the descriptive lines about the game came from the programmers rather than from me for the first game in particular. So
So if you have dialogue versus incidental text, the text was mostly done by the team. Some of it I wrote, some of it programmers in the team wrote.
Yeah.
Whereas the dialogue is almost entirely Lori's. Although I did some important dialogue, such as the meeps.
Yes. So it probably is just coincidence, but it works for me. I mean, when you come to Spielberg Valley, you're probably a pimply teenager getting into this, so you probably aren't at your best looking. And of course, you are a little pixel character on the screen, so you do get better looking as you play the game and as the graphics get better. So it's not just a coincidence.
Oh, there we go.
It's the real world.
Yeah. It was designed that way,
yeah,
clearly.
Designed that way. You start out as the wimpy teenager, and by the end of the game, you are a buff hero. Very made up. Of course, it's very made up. Everything's made up. So, and it all works, That's the beauty.
Meta in America.
Uh-huh. So, anyway, that's history.
So, it's just some of the things that went on. We just had amazing creative people we worked with, and the games. and having no idea what we were actually doing, we were basically thrown into this, and Lori was thrown as a game director without having ever made a computer game before. It worked out as we went along, and the other members of the team that had actually worked on some other projects contributed enormous amounts to both our knowledge and to the actual assets and things.
We have some other Christmas cards.
Yeah, hold them up there.
Yeah, hold them up. There
Okay.
we go.
There we got Sammy and
Calvin and a quirk, a green quirk.
Green quirk.
All there for in front of the holiday queen.
Sammy the Corgi is from Sammy's Story, which is a game that may be out in 2030
Well,
or so.
at any rate, it will be the sequel to Afeo's game, assuming that Afeo actually sells.
And here we have Afeo and Tilly and the snowman in front of the castle.
This snowman dressed
And,
like the famous adventurer.
Oh yes, with his stolen pith helmet, no doubt.
Yes, yes.
And Afeo's familiar flying up above.
Yeah, so we have holidays cards. We've had holiday cards for every year.
Because Lori likes holidays.
Because I just thought it was fun. It's always been a free wallpaper. There's probably another link on our Patreon for the previous years.
Yes, you definitely. I should post the Patreon again, but you definitely should visit our Patreon. First of all, if you do actually become a paid patron, that's super useful for us to do stuff on the games. But we also make. I'm going to give just the main one this time.
Okay. You have to get rid of the P.
Yep.
Okay.
There we go. There's our Patreon, and even if you don't become a member, get up there. We've got a lot of public content there. I would say 95% of the content up there is available to anyone.
And then there's Discord, and that's the place everybody here should be part of, because after all,
that's the participatory.
That's what's keeping the game series alive, is being able to actually talk to people about the things you like, and it is a community. And we certainly like people to be part of this community.
And here is a Discord link. Hidden use copy button. What?
Okay.
That's not what it's supposed to give me.
That is not what it should say.
Copy. Okay.
Oh, it took that. Okay, fine.
That is not working. Okay.
Okay, well, sorry. I hope you're all part of this, because otherwise you're out of luck. The invite thing is not working correctly.
That's never happened before.
I'm rewatching the 1998
Said
Merlin.
copied. Okay, let's try it here. All right, it says hit and use copy button. Nope, that sure doesn't work.
Okay, well, they get to see what it's showing us. Oh, well, something's broken. And
Edit invite link.
yes.
Generate a new
Anyway,
link.
you can say that. I'm going to read what Arlo's talking about. He's watching the Merlin miniseries with Sam Neill, and I noticed the cover art has a sword with a bit of blue flame at the bottom. So, Paladin Wizard named Merlin is the correct playthrough of Quest for Glory. All things come together. Interesting. Well, it's... Alright, that's... There we go. There's how to do it.
Okay, search for Transsolar Games in Discord. Discord.gg.
Yes. And there you will open your doors to a huge community of everything from discussions to what else is in there.
I don't know. Let's see. Oh, that's right. It doesn't show up in...
It doesn't show up because...
It doesn't work in whatever this is.
Yes. Scroll down a bit on your... the topics. I was going to see what's...
topics. Okay.
What's big today? There's introductions. There's philosophy and films and TV discussions.
Politics Plus, which is
discussion,
yes.
lively discussions, yes. And then we come down to discussions of all the Quest for Glory games.
7 Days at Hero U, Tilly's Tale, Quest for Glory.
And the cookbook is active. And of course, the most active channel of all is...
I tell you, with cannellini sauce.
Ooh. Well, it is mostly M.
mostly M. Seiko, who was actually on our development team.
Yes, M. Seiko, who is currently
in Sardinia! Or real life Sardinia.
Yes, thank you for the actual address there. He is in real world Sardinia. You got to.
I don't know if I can copy this or not.
I don't think you can.
Nope.
You can't copy it. Oh well. So yes, and the
Anyway, the real world, Sardinia is modeled after Sardinia, which is an island off of Italy. Ah, someone gave me a.
yes, they did.
Oh, really? It's Trensor rather than Trensor game. Okay. And uh, we would have probably named the capital city Calamari because we like food-related jokes. Except, unfortunately, the actual capital of Sardinia is Calamari, so we went with Caligari instead from the old black and white film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Yes.
So
And we did not go with the real actual geography of Sardinia, but it turns out that Sardinia is mostly mountains, and so it would work really well.
mhm.
So the other really popular channel that you should always keep up on in our Discord is the Penitentiary, and you can imagine what that is.
So that's my favorite. That's under the creators section.
Mm-hmm.
Here,
Yeah.
Benchmaster, here's a simple puzzle that will take them less than 10 minutes. The party coming across said puzzle. This is beyond science.
Yeah, well, we were doing puzzles in World of Warcraft, and their idea of puzzles are very obtuse.
They're basically unsolvable.
Unsolvable puzzles, yes.
One
But
of the tricks, this is something we've said about riddles for a long time,
Yeah.
is that riddles are relatively easy to construct and they're completely unfair. That basically you solve them either because you have a common referent with the puzzle designer or or you keep guessing until you get it.
so we've had riddles in our game, but it is not a big part of it because obviously it's just not really fair unless you've already given the answer.
I mentioned that the second Wizardry game was a subtitle Wizardry 2, The Knight of Diamonds. There were several riddles in there that you had to type in the answer to the riddle. And one of them was, who's buried in this tomb or whatever, something. And I very quickly figured out, it's the game title. It's so I would type in Knight of Diamonds and said, wrong, and I'd get zapped. Well, it turned out after a year later, after I got stopped being disgusted and came back to the game, I found a walkthrough, and the answer is the Knight of Diamonds.
Yes,
And
wonderful parser.
If you don't have the word the in there, or the as you prefer, you don't get the puzzle.
So all of you people who prefer parser games, masochists.
They're fine if the programmers make really good use of the parser. There's an infamous bug in Leisure Suit Larry 2, in which you're supposed to combine an airsick bag with something else to, a hose or something like a straw or something like that. And Al programmed that himself, and because he was relatively unfamiliar with the parser at the time, if you type in put straw in airsick bag, it works. If you do, or attach straw to airsick bag, that works. But if you say attach airsick bag to straw, it doesn't work. And that's a very common thing with, if the programmers have not done the work. Ruins of Intentions, file under T for the. Uh-huh. And that is one of the problems with books and stuff is, if you have, The Frozen Throne, do you file that under F or under T? And if you file it under T, it's kind of useless because there's zillions of titles out there that start with the. So these days, most people alphabetize that under F for Frozen.
Orlo argues about the weapon master is a thief.
Interesting.
And from the perspective of Quest for Glory, and you only have 4 choices. Yeah, I think the thief works for him.
Okay, one, you only have 3 choices.
Yes, but honestly, in real life, of course, there's the subset of fighter, which we would have called swashbuckler, which eventually got it into I think AD&D's and
Yeah, the AD&D systems gradually went with more specializations. Uh, so they, it was developed kind of chaotically. That they would people would publish articles in the
yeah, and
the
you get
strategist
add-on books that
strategic review.
could be taken as main thing as literal, but not everybody had those, so you couldn't trust whether or not GM actually accepted those as canon. But yeah, I would say that the Weapon Master is a swashbuckler. And that's the one with the never uses shields or armor and relies on his agility as his main stat rather than strength. We wanted to simplify the systems and keep them fairly straightforward, so we did not have the nuances that a good game system should have, so that you could really just put the Weapon Master in his place.
Yeah, one of
So
the
to
most
speak.
powerful characters in Dungeons and Dragons was the Ranger, and that was actually added to the system by Gary Gygax because his son wanted a power character. So he created the Ranger class just for his son. So all the other characters started out with a single die, different size die for hit points, up to a maximum of 10 for the fighter. The Ranger started out with two 8-sided dice, so at a maximum of 16 hit points to start out, and had a number of other advantages early on. So it's an unbalanced character, but his son wanted an unbalanced character, so that's what he gave him.
And he put it in the game.
And that eventually got into the game because other people wanted that too. People want to
Brainiac
be powerful.
says, I rather liked how you had the translation of the prophecy about Iblis was different between Atavis and he who waits behind. Sometimes just sheer time and transliteration is enough to completely change meaning and interpretation. Yeah, I really like the concept that prophecy is an ambiguous thing and that, it can be reinterpreted.
And it's the old game of telephone.
That's
the more,
it.
prophecy is oral,
Mm-hmm.
and the more times it gets repeated, it loses a little in the translation each time. So that was extremely intentional. Laurie actually made, I think, 3 different versions of the prophecy, and depending on who you ask, you get the different portions of it and the different interpretations of it. So obviously, Atavis, got as much of the prophecy as he got, and
What he wanted to hear.
and yeah, what he wanted to hear, and he used it self-servingly. Iblis, who was quite a bit older than Atavis.
Iblis, no.
Iblis,
He is.
he waits behind, wasn't that Iblis?
No.
I thought so. Anyway, had the correct version, and then I think Aziza or someone in town also had portions of the prophecy.
Someone.
Oh, I'm sorry, Iblis. Did I say Iblis?
Yes, you did.
Oh, Iblis is no.
No.
Iblis is not the genie.
No.
The genie has the more correct version of the prophecy.
Yes. And then you have someone like Geoffrey of Monmouth, who completely mucks the whole thing up beyond recognition.
Okay, I have no idea what you're referring to.
But,
I know the name, but nothing about him.
Right. We always have
Something to do with the. Well, I won't show off my ignorance by saying what I
trying to
think
say
he is.
what you think.
I think I know who he is, but
Okay, good.
but I don't know what you mean about the prophecy.
Okay, fine. So. Yes.
Iblis was a Marid,
Yes.
which is a variation of a genie. So there were genies and Marids and Ifrits and
they were all different elements.
Sylphs.
Yes. Sylphs or air, all of them had different. The modern interpretation of these things assigned them to an element. And so,
And genie, by the way, is not. There's no such thing as a genie. Genie is the plural of jinn.
Yeah.
But people like the sound of genie, so that's what we use.
Yes.
But it really doesn't matter because that's all just historical lore and translation and so on, and we have our modern lore influenced by films and such.
It took me forever as a kid to figure out Suleiman. I felt like it never showed up anywhere in the game, but it must have. Interesting.
Well, it
John?
should have. Yeah, Suleiman is another name for Solomon, King Solomon, and in Kabbalah lore, uh, there's the seal of Solomon was that was the six-pointed star.
Yes, it's a
Yeah,
six-pointed star.
which is why we greatly angered a Jewish person who said that we had misappropriated the Star of David and turned it into an evil symbol in our game. Well, first of all, good and evil are somewhat arbitrary in the games, but there's real evil. But it was the Star of Solomon, Star of Suleiman was what became the Star of David, and so we're basically just going back to Middle Ages tradition.
Yeah, okay, yes.
Kabbalistic.
One thing that Arlo says that's out of place that Nawar and Budar act as if they know the hero, even if the hero wasn't actually a rogue that went in through the harem. So,
They still could have met them in town, maybe somewhere.
did. Yeah, they probably did afterwards.
Afterwards.
It wasn't in the game.
After you became a hero.
Yes, after you saved them, and they're all there in they all know about
Sears
you.
a much better place, and they know that you're responsible. Yeah, they would have been friendly to you.
Yeah, that was it.
That's it.
And besides, there is some time period. That game between 2 and 3, there is a time lapse. Not very long, but there is a time lapse. And there was probably a celebration Rasir after you liberated Rasir from the evil Adavis and that regime of horror.
And it's also that game stories are kind of hard to write because there's always the conflict between players doing what the players decide to do and what's going on in game 2 versus 5 or 6 years later writing 5.
Right, and so we had to average the experience, So yes, in theory, Mudar and Nawar could have, not remembered the hero, and that would have been the right call probably for keeping the reality consistent. But no.
Yeah, Lori and I talked about bringing in kind of a history quiz into Hero U that would have referred to events in Quest for Glory 5, and we decided that the problem is that every player's experience is different. So who's the king of Somaria? Well, that depends.
Yeah, which, when, and how. So yes, let's see. If you complete the trial without becoming a proper wizard, you obviously went back to it and finished the entrance exam because you are a wizard with reversal for the rest of the series.
Oh, do you only learn reversal by doing that?
I guess so. I don't remember that part, but I do know we just started calling them wizards after that.
Yes.
And then there's the
wizard is just a
Fenris versus Fenris, and that's my bad because spelling.
Oh, the
is not
Fenris and
consistent.
Fenris, yeah. I think there were a couple others like that, but I think Rasir was spelled a couple different ways, different places too.
Yeah, well, that's just consistency is the bugaboo of little minds, obviously.
But everyone's experience is a little bit different. We basically painted Wit as a bunch of pompous, stuck-up wizards. Oh, I was just going to say the word wizard is just a simpler, less schwa term than magic user, so it's just more straightforward.
It was easier.
The problem in Hero U is now you have wizard and warrior, and you really shouldn't start 2 classes with the same letter.
Yes. You can win without the reversal spell. Adavi simply doesn't use the transformational magic. Well, that's good. It's like, yes, we did count for that. It is good to know. Well, if we were smart, we would look to see what you had available and make sure that it works for the ending too. But we weren't always smart.
Yeah, this was Ron Gilbert wrote an article in which why adventure games suck and what we can do about it. And one of the things he talked about was Indiana Jones as the door is slamming shut on him, rolls through just in time, loses his hat, and then uses bullwhip to snag the hat and pull it under the door before it slams. and says that if you were really making a game as a skill game, it would never play out right. Either the door would slam shut too soon and you'd die, or it would be so easy there's no contest and no conflict, etc. So what they did with that was basically choreographed it so that whatever skill level the player actually had, it made it look as though he barely succeeded in dying. Because that's really what the movie experience is you want the hero to succeed, but you want to make it look very difficult and challenging and dangerous.
That's very timing is everything, and that's what makes humor in games rather difficult to actually pull off correctly. I mean, we can do verbal humor, but we can't do slapstick well, because slapstick really requires a good sense of timing.
So certainly in a game ending, you can do it by looking at what abilities the player actually has and making sure that the puzzle is solvable with whatever abilities he has, and just having the ending alter slightly for it. So it doesn't make any sense to frustrate the player by saying, oh, you got to the ending, but 3 months ago,
you didn't pick up the spell.
You should have picked up a spell. You idiot!
What were you thinking? Yes.
Yep. Well, that's the game designer's fault. That's not the player's fault.
Yeah. And if this were a King's Quest, you'd get thanks for playing King's Quest for Glory 2. Next time, be more observant. Yes. We just didn't want to go that route as best we can.
And there's the old thing about, death in computer games. Part of it also is that neither Lori and I started out as professional computer game designers. Nobody did.
We're all making this up as we go along.
So we played some D&D, and depending on which groups we played D&D in, we had experiences we translated to it. Roberta played Colossal Cave Adventure and was inspired by that. And, everybody has their own background experiences, and then you do the best you can from there.
Here we go. Brainiac says, where you find Solomon/Suleiman that gets mentioned earlier in the game, you might want to look at the gold you swap to Dinarzad. The heavy golden dinar is the coin preferred by nobility. The front bears the image of Suleiman ben Daoud, master of the jinn.
Oh, there we go.
And Cephalus Squid says the new Indiana Jones game is one of the better movie-to-game adaptations. So
that's great.
Great. We always love to hear when a
game is good.
Yes, exactly. Did any of the games that have you guys avatars directly commenting on the player's death? Like, no.
Lori would have absolutely refused to do that.
But I had to laugh when I saw Roberta Williams with the one that they had at the time with her in the hot tub image there. And I said, every time you die, you're going to see Roberta there. And she's telling you you were a bad boy. And don't want my face associated with that kind of negative
even when they made it slightly
less
risque by taking her out of the hot tub, it's still Roberta telling you that you screwed up.
Right. And
Lori does not want to say, Lori tells you that you blew it.
No, I want you to say, try again more than that. And I don't want to be me there.
This can be solved. Just keep working on it. You'll get it. There's kind of a problem there with a player death and then saying, now solve the problem. Because in the real world, player death is kind of the end of the game.
Yeah.
So
I had every sympathy for Ron Gilbert's point of view of not killing off.
Don't kill the player ever.
Yeah. I just thought there were other ways to handle it.
So Lori's viewpoint has always been not that player death is good, but that the belief that you might be in that you are in serious danger builds dramatic tension, and that is good.
Yes, that's what we're trying to create there. The feeling that, yes, you might die if you do this wrong, and that bit of anxiety just enhances the gameplay to my mind. And
OSU Brainiac says consequence is key, which is certainly something we've said over and over, but actually it's the illusion of consequence is key. So the indie experience is perfect for that. That the idea that you could die at any moment, but somehow through your superior skill and or luck, you never actually do. That's optimal.
Yeah, I do enjoy creative death animations such as the Space Quest. Later on, the try again button helped a lot. I like that idea.
Yeah, that's
I
where you
never
have an auto
saw
save.
it.
Yeah.
I did not see it. That takes you back to your auto save.
Yep.
That's that we should have put in our games.
Auto saves are hard too because
Yeah. Oh yeah.
there's the phenomenon in games called Dead Man Walking.
Yes.
And that's where, as we talked about, like with the reversal spell, somewhere in the game you had to do something you didn't do, and then, 6 months later, as you're playing the game and you come back to it, you discover you can't win the game because you didn't do that thing. That's a dead man walking. That's terrible game design. And so the problem with a save game is, one of the things we did very intentionally in Heroes Quest is we did not allow you to save the game during combat. And there were a few other restrictions. And the idea was, because of RNG, let's say you're fighting a troll and he definitely outclasses you, but you get lucky and get a hit in. Okay, now you save the game. You've got some damage in the troll. And then he kills you, and you go back and restore the game and try 15 more times and get another hit in, save it again. Well, that's not particularly fun. And it sort of takes away the whole idea of conflict and challenge.
Yes, but that really isn't the dead man walking.
Yeah, the dead man walking is the other side of it, is that you say, oh my God, I'm about to be hit by a troll and it'll kill me. So you save the game right at the last second. And then you discover that no matter what you do, that troll kills you, and that you've just overwritten your previous save game with one in an unwinnable situation.
So therefore, we always tried to have an auto save to save your butt when you
Far enough
forgot
back
to save. And we did that when you entered an area with danger. We would auto save.
In Hero U.
In Hero U. That was the obvious change that we did along the way of knowing.
Yeah, but it's still hard to figure out where to put that.
But letting the player make his saves whenever he wants to gives you agency.
And you
to
don't
be able to
overwrite
control
the
it.
player
Yes.
saves. You only overwrite the auto save.
Yes. Maybe you should consider not killing the character, just making a paraplegic. Happy middle ground? Yeah. I think that I don't want to animate him going around in a wheelchair. That's not very practical. But also, is it fun? That is a question the game designer has to ask himself constantly. Oh, you lost an arm. Gee, now we can remove one body part. You can only use the other body part. I mean, there is a D&D variant.
Yeah, I think it was RuneQuest on tabletop gaming that had specific hit locations and so on, and a critical hit could chop off your arm or something.
Yes.
And they had all these crippled characters walking around.
Might be realistic, but is it fun? That's the ultimate question. Yes. I think I left King's Quest V alone for a year because I failed to throw a shoe at a cat 2 hours earlier. Dead man walking. Yikes. Yeah. And part of it is ignorance on the part of the game designer, who really has to be able to project all the consequences of every action in the game.
Yeah, so, should this be required? If it is required, is it properly communicated to the player that it's required? And what you want to do in a case like that is if the player tries to leave the scene, they either can't or they end up in a loop where they keep coming back there until they throw the shoe at the cat. That's a really stupid puzzle that shouldn't be in there in the first place. But given that you're going to have it in there, you got to make sure that the player does anything that you say the player must do.
Yes, just it.
There have been games that when they take you to a different zone, basically strip all your equipment from you, and so you start out, just arbitrarily takes away all the things you don't need anymore.
Yeah. Moon Lily, welcome.
Hi there.
I love hearing these game design convos. I learned so much. Thank you. Well, we're glad to have you here.
What we're trying to do is make everyone better at this than we are, so that we don't have to keep making. We can play your games, so we don't have to keep making them forever.
Right. And we want you to learn how the million of mistakes you can make along the way, because we've made a lot of them. Yes. Or at least we played games with them, and so we know to correct for those things.
Yeah, I had the interesting experience of, early on in my player career, playing in different D&D campaigns. One of them was a killer game that average life expectancy for a character was, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 sessions, and then you roll up another character. So you never got too attached to your one character. And then we went to the ones with the other group of game masters, in which basically players never died, or if they did, that resurrections were a dime a dozen. You just go to the nearest temple.
Yeah,
and,
you didn't actually die. No,
five gold, you're resurrected.
but
Next case.
I would not have enjoyed the game if I had been in his game first, the one that killed you off, because I.
Oh, but it was so creative, and the storytelling was wonderful, and the puzzles were wonderful.
It's all about character for me and who my character is. It's all role playing, so that's how I do things.
Well, one player got around this. Loved to play thief characters.
Yeah, you've told that story before.
Yeah, he played a thief. Every time he rolled, every week his thief died, and he rolled up another thief. So they were really all interchangeable.
They were all They were
all the same character.
Yes, exactly. Let's see. I, for one, think having to replay from the beginning is just a fact of life of adventure games, and also helps to reinforce your memory of the game and possibly discover new things you missed the first time. Having to replay the game from the beginning, it was the school of thought for games like Ghosts and Ghouls and Goblins. Ghouls and Goblins and Ghostbusters and that and Mario Brothers. You learned by repetition. You learned how to get around these things by dying and coming at it again.
And Pac-Man, each time you played, you memorized the maze a little bit better. And eventually, you found it in a book somewhere.
So that was an interesting gameplay thing that had never, it was totally original. It was the original play till you die, then play some more till you've learned the pattern. Pattern recognition games. We tried to avoid that.
These games started out as arcade games.
Yes.
And the arcade games' whole reason of existence was to eat quarters. Yep. And so they wanted to give you a couple of minutes of satisfying gameplay and then have you put another quarter in, because otherwise they didn't make a profit on it.
So yeah, they were designed for this purpose.
The earlier ones like Pong and Pac-Man, actually Pac-Man came later, but like Pong, really simplistic game. But it was so successful initially that the creators of it basically got a call from one of the arcades saying your game isn't working. People can't put quarters in. They went out to check on it and found out that the quarter box was completely overflowing. So many people had put in so many quarters, and this was 6 hours after they'd gone in there. So it was such a unique and novel experience that people were happy to pour quarter after quarter into it.
Sujak says King's Quest V is real nonsense in the dead man walking department, but apparently people love it for its vibes. And Tashtari says, a friend and I lost our first run of Quest for Glory 1 because of saving right on top of the carpet pit in the Brigand Fortress.
Oh, yeah. I've done stuff like that.
Yes.
So that is supposed to be difficult, but unfortunately,
it can be a dead man walking if we don't predict these behavior, and
as you get more experience at these, you learn to have multiple rotating save games.
If a person doesn't like having to start over from the beginning, they really didn't like your game to begin with. Or let the player go back and throw the shoe again. Yes, that making it more open and saying you had to do that, and if you didn't do it, well, you could
at least make sure they can get back to that place. We actually had some criticism on Summer Days Tilly's Tale that someone said, this game only lasted 2 hours. And we said, well, you're not supposed to only play it once. It is designed so you have a different experience each time you play it. And I play a lot of bridge, and a bridge game only takes 5 minutes, a bridge hand. So, if that was the measure of a bad game, then I would not have been hooked on it for the last 40 years.
Yeah. All right. And let's see. Such an experience to make them go back to the beginning, make them dislike your game if you didn't already. Nobody kind of likes their nose rubbed into the fact that they just made a mistake and they have to start over. It's a definite downer. And time is always a premium. if you decide to restart for some reason, that's your choice. But if you have to repeat loads of stuff you've already done because of some minor unclear reason, I think it's a legitimate complaint. And we tend to agree with that. I mean, but, as we said, game designers are human.
Great adventure games give you feedback and, effectively give you clues and hints when they say, okay, you're not getting this. So like the Wajidai games, I'll do that. One of the problems I have with games like World of Warcraft is there just is no explanatory, you get thrown into a puzzle without really any explanation of what it is you're trying to do. There was a engineering toy that had you effectively solving different types of mazes and puzzle things with no explanation whatever. And, a couple of types I figured out, but one of the types I just couldn't figure it out. And that later actually became a puzzle they put throughout the game. And after you've done it a few dozen times, you realize that, I'm supposed to untangle the lines in order to make distinct geometric figures. But that's really completely arbitrary. And, once you learn it, you learn it. But, they should have some clues in there. They have a Bejeweled kind of match 3 game that appears in several places. And there's no indication there what the winning condition is.
Yes.
So.
Now they've learned, and now the most recent iteration of it actually told me what the winning condition was. But it did so in a way that it wasn't obvious that was the solution that you were looking for. So things are ambiguous. I prefer adventure games that actually lay things out, yes. And Sujak says, yes, I am pro-death, but anti-death dead ends in adventure games. And I certainly agree with that. And this name Stinks says, I turn 50 next year. Maybe I'll start my game dev career.
That's a good time.
It is. We just our birthdays turned us over to the next year.
We're a new year. We're not quite a new decade yet, but
yes.
that's coming soon.
Yeah, it's coming too soon for comfort, but yes. That is something that we.
But we were worn out old people when we started Heroes Quest. We were over 30.
Right.
And no game designer, no game developer starts after age 30. We did.
Let's see. Brainiac says, as for the stripping inventory when you leave regions, I remember the second Westwood Curandia game doing that a lot. It was at least amusing in most cases, but it did get a little much.
And sometimes they have an in-game explanation for it.
I wouldn't mind it if there was an in-game. Is that you can only take so much junk, and this will be, to go to the next region, they're going to tax you on all the equipment you take with you. Then you would actually, if you had to physically do that, it would be very interesting as a gameplay mechanic.
I mean, going all the way back to Colossal Cave, there's a room with a very tight passage that is so narrow you can't carry any of your equipment. And, of course, that game was based on actual caving, so that's actually a thing that happens. There can be such a narrow crawl space that you can't get in there with your gear. And the trick to that one was how do you get a light into that room so you can see what you're doing.
You needed your bullwhip, clearly.
Yeah, something like that. There is a solution to the game. I solved it 40 years ago. I don't remember it now.
I used to play bass for the interchangeable saves. All right. Cyber Mermaid is here. I haven't made one of these for a while. Hi there, Cyber Mermaid.
Pleased to meet you.
And this name Stinks said, Dragon's Lair was a miserable experience for me. Absolutely beautiful to look at, but cost $1 and was over so quickly. Yeah. When it came out, it wasn't quite $1, I didn't think. But
it was either 50 cents or $1.
Yeah.
It was the most expensive. It might have been $1.
And it only lasted a few minutes. And
a few seconds.
Yes. And all of this great graphics you couldn't get to. You couldn't see
until you
the
got
game,
to go to the game.
unless
You
put
could
in.
watch somebody else play that had already memorized it, which
I agree.
a lot of people did.
It was awful, and I remember that game as awful. And that was Don Bluth's animation. And
So
really
a period
looked
when
good.
Lori and I were out of work and we were interviewing with different game companies. One of them we brought in our proposal for a Wizard Duel game where you would have a campaign mode. You would go from city to city, competing in the arena, and they basically said that's too much. It's too much to pull off. You can't have the campaign mode and the Street Fighter style fighting and all this other stuff in one game. And they were probably right.
Well, they were right.
Another one was the company that wanted to basically do a Dragon Slayer clone. And we actually proposed something else to them. They said, I don't know. And so the founders of the company designed the game.
Full motion graphics era.
Yep.
Where full motion was going to be.
Full motion video was the be all and end all.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make Hollywood movies and games.
Yep.
And so they made one that had full motion video, but the gameplay was essentially a complete clone of Dragon Slayer. And we heard that initially they sold about 100 copies or fewer. So it's just amazing that it was even possible to do that badly.
Huge amount of money.
Yeah, a multi-million-dollar game.
Oh my God. Yes. Let's see. I had a childhood friend who saved at the moment when some bug froze Day of the Tentacle, and interestingly enough, restored to the same bug where nothing worked.
Ew!
That's why you need more than one save game.
What that actually means, from a game developer standpoint, is you actually did the thing that caused the bug to happen somewhat earlier, maybe quite a bit earlier, and that's just where it shows up.
Yes.
So it might not have mattered if you had saved the game half an hour before the bug. It might still have happened.
Or just before that point.
Yeah.
Because if it's a memory leak type of thing, it's just a walking time bomb, and eventually it explodes.
Quest for Glory 2 had that. Every time you fought the Jackal Man in the desert, it leaked a little more memory, and by the time you got to the end game, that was extremely memory intensive, that there wasn't enough left.
So yes, so therefore one of those bugs that's almost is ridiculously hard to figure out.
And it's just completely unrelated. The cause and the behavior were completely different places in the game.
Cyber Mermaid says, I like how ubiquitous autosaves have become in the modern gaming world. Yes, I mean, well, we all learned from the games that we didn't like, and almost every game designer out there plays games. So they've got in their mind, I can do this better than they can, so they'll steal the things that really worked well for them. And Moon Lily says, it's funny, as I get older, I get impatient with games with too much exploration.
Mm-hmm.
I want a little bit of it, but overall, I want a linear experience. A lot of it is just the time available. That's why I don't play too many open world games. I don't know if I could handle King's Quest and the like nowadays as much as I love them. I tend to agree with that too. And although I play WoW, there is such a thing as too much.
Well, in the early days, all the role-playing games, if you played Wizardry or Dungeon Master, all that, you took out your graph paper and you made maps of the dungeons. And especially when you have tricks like teleport rooms and spinners and stuff like that, you almost have to do that. So everyone did that. It's just a matter of course. We played a dungeon game.
You have a graph paper there to do it.
I have this. This isn't actually graph paper. This is actually spreadsheet paper.
Oh, but that's the kind of thing we would use. Yes. What is that spreadsheet for?
It says something about Lil Rathion.
Oh, I see.
And it has a bunch of numbers. And I don't remember what this was, but it was some puzzle I was working on.
Yes, you would graph out the places. We would do that. And nobody has the time or patience for that nowadays.
I've got a financial spreadsheet on the previous page.
Let's see. Raspinall says, that was my impression of Myst, i.e., what's this lever do? Time to check the entire island to see what happened. Oh, I could not play
yes, I have the budget on our home remodel on the previous page.
Oh, okay, good.
Along with some World of Warcraft engineering notes and
and
then I have
a puzzle.
Puzzle from the Puzzle Agent, the LucasArts Puzzle Agent game.
Oh, I see. You've solved a puzzle on this page. He does...
RGG, CRC, BRRC, and so on.
Uh-huh.
I came up with a notation for the puzzle and worked on it.
I just could not play Myst. It was too much of click this, and find the pixel, hunt the pixel, which I don't care for as a gameplay.
So in my long-winded diversion, I was actually going to say that for most players, they really don't. It was a lot of fun back in the day to do those graphs, but once you've done it a couple times, you don't want to do it again. You want the game to do the graphing for you.
We as players evolve, as well as the games have to evolve to match the players, yes.
Our earliest experiences with Dungeons and Dragons, the excitement of fighting a kobold, the amazing when you first got your first magic item and you didn't know what it did, and eventually got it identified and discovered it's a +1 dagger.
Wow.
And you eventually got to, there's that shimmering jelly-like cube. I wonder what I should do with that. And you eventually learn, run away!
Yes. Yes.
The gelatinous cube. But all these things, when they were new and they were mysterious, were amazing. And by the 17th time you fought orcs, you kind of know what to expect from an orc.
Yeah. So the players, games have to evolve just like the players do. And let's see, the arbitrary stuff, I agree, is poor game design. But something like going to Rasir without passing the wit initiation, that's common sense that you need to do that. If you can't beat the game after that, it's your own fault. To an extent,
I don't know, what's common sense?
Yes, it assumes the player has common sense, and that isn't something we can predict.
And the player doesn't actually, the way we did the caravan, you don't actually know when you're suddenly going to be on that caravan.
Plus, there's the idea of you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know.
If you try the wit initiation 3 or 4 times and don't get it, are you going to keep hitting your head against it, or are you going to go on to other stuff and maybe forget about it?
Well, if you're an adventure game player, you're probably hitting your head against it until you solve it, because that's the nature of it.
And by the way, in our playthrough of it, we got there and didn't manage that's where we're stuck currently on our Quest for Glory 2 playthrough.
Yes, we've hit our heads a couple
because I didn't want to cheat and look up the answer, and we're trying to figure out the logic, and it's maybe not quite as logical as we thought it was when we wrote it.
Yes. Let's see.
Fetching a spinning propeller?
Yeah. Yes. It's perfectly understandable to ignore Keepon's passing message of it and never cast detect in the alleyways. This is true. Our clues were pretty ambiguous. And now we have a very different Hollywood video in games. Well, yes, whereas the games are better Hollywood films in some places than the Hollywood films.
Yeah, I think the Harry Potter game is supposed to be pretty good.
And Arlo says, I never once played Quest for Glory 2 as a wizard without passing the wit test. It was always obvious that was the thing you needed to do, yeah. And Ribbons of Intention said, I was daydreaming of going to a movie theater and voting on what characters would do.
There were some films like that.
Well, not so much films, but there were television shows. There was a television show where you had a gun, and you could click on which answer you wanted that to go to the studio, and the next episode would take that into account of how many people had voted for what. And
there's some web comics that basically poll the readers, and then he has different story paths in mind, and the story develops in the path of what the readers ask for.
But Osmi asks,
I think Control-Alt-Delete did that, which is one of my favorites.
Did you have to handle memory management yourself in SCI?
Theoretically not, but in practice, if you make a coding mistake, so in modern languages, basically you allocate a variable, and when you leave the scope of where you allocated it, it's automatically freed. But SCI was not that sophisticated.
No, there were not the right programming practices at the time that we knew to predict this stuff. Yes.
And some of these things, it's memory management is one of the harder problems in software engineering. Yeah. And one of the things is not necessarily whether or not the memory is freed, but did you end up fragmenting memory? Did you end up allocating a bunch of small blocks that broke up the large free areas of memory so that when you're done with that and later on you want to allocate a large block of memory, there's no contiguous block available for it. And there's whole garbage collection things and stuff. Basic language periodically goes through and compresses the free memory to get big blocks available again. So I think that's most of the time when you say that there's a memory leak. It's not actually necessarily true that the memory was never freed. It's just that it breaks up the memory into little fragments that are no longer useful.
Okay. Let's see.
What?
Yes.
That wasn't educational?
It's very educational.
Confusing.
Yes. Tashtari says the game doesn't actually funnel you towards wit. Yes, and you shouldn't be punished for not realizing that it exists at all. And I agree with that. And fortunately, we managed to save because
we gave enough hints, though, that
yes.
Aziza and Keep On both tell you something about that suggests that you should be using Detect Magic.
The nice thing is, if you didn't do it, you still were saved at endgame, so that's fine. I don't mind that one. Yeah.
And it gives you reason to come back and play it again and
Yes.
discover that,
obvious
why
to
am I
you,
100 points short?
But doesn't mean it's obvious to other people, and that's the problem with any puzzles in a game, and that's why designers tear out their hair, and that's why Corey looks like this today.
Hey, I got lots of hair on top. It's just very fine and not visible on camera.
Yeah.
I am completely populated.
So, right. It is very, what is obvious to one person.
But yes, I did start to lose my hair at Sierra.
Uh-huh. Yes. Yes.
I got a beard when I started too.
We do not want the game designer concluding, if you forgot this thing and lock yourself into an unwinnable state, that's your own fault. No. That's the designer's fault. And we will take full blame for it, even when it is a programmer fault, when it wasn't actually the designer problem. But,
Yeah, well, it's the parser issue sometimes.
Yes, there are a lot of
I've read so many reviews of adventure games that talk about a game having a great parser or a game having a bad parser, and really probably the parsers are the same. The ones with the bad parsers are ones where the developers of the game did not make full use of the parser or provide enough options for the players.
And I'm not sure if it is natural to cast Detect Magic everywhere, but the whole point
You only have to do it once.
Yes.
Once you do it once,
if you did it once,
it's obvious that you should do it again.
Yes, because we do give you a response, and that's the key, is to get people to, reward people when they do a behavior you want them to do. It's very operant conditioning, and we really believed that school of thought, that you reward the player, you try to get the player to do behaviors.
This is one of the disagreements Lori had with one of our producers, was over whether every single interaction, that's a ridiculous interaction, needs feedback. And Lori's theory was, no, don't reward the player by giving feedback for a meaningless action. Channel the player into doing things that will lead to solving the game by only rewarding ones that are at least adjacent to the solution.
Yeah, and that's just a philosophy thing, yes. Yes, too many open world games have too much busy work type activities, seemingly to pad playtime. I would have loved these as a kid, but prefer a tighter experience this day. And yes, how does this relate to the game? And I think that's an important question to ask when anything you have in the game is how does it further the story? How does it further the player's enjoyment of the game?
Even with like the early King's Quest games, when I played them before we made Heroes Quest, I said these games feel so sparse. It feels like each scene only has one purpose, and a lot of the rooms, like in King's Quest 4, a lot of the rooms are just passed through and have no purpose. And I said we should not have a scene with no purpose.
We did have a few pass-through rooms. Generally, we had combat in them.
Yeah, there were monster combat rooms.
And then when we got to the stage where we wanted to have vast, sweeping landscapes, we went to mini-maps and things like that to keep the feeling that you're really still in a huge world, but not the tedium of having to go through variations of the theme. Yes. Yes, and not everyone is experienced with adventure games either, especially nowadays. And Tashtari, magic is part of this world, doesn't point to it at all. Yes, people don't always read the manual. Exactly. And, but we tried to make it so that it didn't matter. Yes. Mist is a very peculiar set of experiences, and it's not for everyone. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I'll never know whether I would have loved Myst back then because when we played it on our AT&T 6300 with the 8086 chip, we basically got maybe I was with 286, but anyway, we got to about 3 rooms into the game and it locked up. So I said, okay, my computer can't handle it. Forget it.
Yeah. And yes, Moon Lily says, yeah, I hear you. If there's too much content, I usually just lose interest. I'd rather play a tight 5-hour game than a sprawling 20-hour game. Yes, I never was into the Japanese RPGs, the JRPGs, that were a lot of go around and hit things, and beat things up and try to get into other buildings. So it did not do it for me as a gameplay. And so therefore we didn't do those kind of games. Yes. Players are one thing and one thing only. Arbiters of true chaos. There we go. You could try to predict what they'll do, but they'll usually always underestimate. You're usually always underestimating and overestimating them. That was rule number 1 of being a dungeon master, is that no matter how you organize and arrange to have a game, and you've got all these things in place and everything, when the minute your player gets in it, the players will do whatever they choose to do, and it won't be whatever you plan to do.
Yeah, one of our friends commiserated with me that he had set up a locked room scenario that had 5 solutions to it, and he wanted to make sure that players could solve it by having 5 different ways of solving it. And the moment the players came in, they took the 6th approach and found one that he hadn't thought of.
And that's what was the beauty of Dungeons and Dragons. As long as you had a dungeon master who was willing to say, uh-oh, that's what they're doing. What happens because of what their behavior is? And so most of my games as a dungeon master were purely improvisation, because you can't predict your players.
We had entire sessions where they never left the tavern.
Yeah, and so therefore, that's what we tried to bring into our game design for computer games. We don't have that facility. We don't have that ability to be able to adapt to whatever the player does. All we can do is try to funnel the player into the right behavior and what we can control, and try to keep enough variation in it that the player feels like they have.
So we try to pre-guess what they might want to do, and what we'd like them to do, but also other things that they might like to do, and then build in reasonable responses and behavior for that. I was going to read. See, I had penitentiary up on my other screen.
I don't think that one will. You have to see that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you'll never get it. You'll have to explain it. Yeah, some puns have to be seen to be believed.
What's a pomegranate?
Yeah. And I found wit because my hard drive spun in the alley, unlike other alleys.
Nice.
Yeah, there we go. That's using your...
There's meta gameplay.
Yes, very good. And let's see, how many hours of beta testing did you have for each Quest for Glory, and how many testers before you deemed a game worth continuing developing or shipping? Well, the answer is...
Never enough.
No.
Never enough.
We always had a tight deadline, and it didn't matter what state the game was in. If we came to that deadline, they threw some, testers on it and said, okay, fine. If it didn't die in the first test, throw it out. And that's why Quest for Glory was the way it was. It was why Quest for Glory 5, the week it was shipping, was Thanksgiving weekend. Basically, had a wonderful thermonuclear blast special effect, which basically did a particle system, which was totally unique at that point. The whole screen went up in a particle situation and looked very cool before everything went black.
Of course, everybody had to replace their monitors after that.
But unfortunately, also on the Macintosh,
it crashed the
game. So that had to be
pulled. I mean, that's kind of realistic.
It worked for me, but no. So that was pulled at the last day before they shipped it.
Because everything had to work on every platform. So if it didn't work on the Mac...
Well, if it didn't work on the Mac, and since the Mac was the thing our lead programmer...
Yeah, Eric Langell loved the Macintosh.
So therefore...
it wasn't good enough.
And so therefore it couldn't be in any version. So, no, we never had enough time, and we never got it properly tested, and it just didn't happen. And that's why, there were bugs. I can't believe, but yes, indeed. Ultimately, Quest for Glory did better than any other Sierra game at letting players come up with their own solutions and trying to accommodate them. That's because we came from that philosophy going in, whereas everybody else was coming from the philosophy of trying to make a good story and turn that into a game. Found it. And Brainiac says, this is Christy Marks, when I started writing my first game, I knew I had to take into account the players could access the story pieces in a non-linear fashion. I thought that I was taking that into account. My colleagues at Sierra kept trying to explain to me that I hadn't gotten it yet. I finally got it when I had a chance to watch players sit down and bash at the game. We never actually had that experience. We never got to watch this happen.
I think once.
No, I didn't. They truly would do anything in any order with no rhyme or reason. I had unconsciously expected players to follow a certain logical sequence the way I would. This was the turning point for me. I finally understood that players were agents of chaos. By the time I was working on Longbow, I had a more solid understanding of designing and writing a non-linear story while maintaining a strong storyline. Yep.
So when Lori writes a game, what she's writing doesn't look anything like a game.
No.
What she does is a whole series of paragraphs that basically says, here is a user prompt, and here's the response to it. And then in some version of the tools, either the programmers or Lori or someone puts this together so that it tests for that input and then gives that response. And then as we got more sophisticated in making the game, she started saying, okay, here is the response if these conditions exist. Whereas if these other conditions exist, do this instead. It starts getting so complex that nobody in the right mind can follow it, which is why only Lori can do it.
Right. So I can program on an if-else basis, and that's what these games really are, a bunch of if statements. Let's see. Yes. It sounds like me when I'm doing game mastering. My players will always, without fail, break the game. I just gave up and let them after a while. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That is the right way. And it also depends on who you're playing with and what kind of character. You have to judge your audience. And we did our judging of audience. We prejudged our audience for our games at Sierra by saying these people are an adventure game background. We have to accommodate the behaviors that they're used to having for adventure games. And that's, interact with stuff. And that's, hit your head against puzzles. It's just, you had to accommodate that. And that's why our games looked like an adventure game from the beginning, because we wanted to accommodate the players.
Arlo says, okay, so Sierra needs to use linked lists instead of arrays. You think we were fancy enough to have arrays?
Yes.
That was one of the in-company jokes is, Joe just got fired. All he did was ask for a raise.
I see.
No, we didn't have them.
We didn't have a raise,
Yeah.
no, and that was correct.
We had variables. We didn't really have flags either. We came up with a complicated way of basically having a few words of memory that individual bits could be checked for flags.
Raspinell says that he wasted an absurd amount of time trying to romance Aziza. Other than the fact there was quite an age difference between your character, and Aziza at the beginning, it would have been nice if that could have happened. But I figured you're just you aren't even a wizard yet, kid. So therefore, she's not going to take you seriously, and get used to disappointment. But sorry, I really do think I would have probably liked that too if I were playing the game. So yeah, being able to romance people were important, and that's why when we went to Road to Redemption, we said, if you want to romance somebody, that's your business, and we will accommodate it as best we can. So yeah, even Infogom had uneven parsers from game today. Well, we had a really good parser for all of the early games, well, all of our games, but you still had depended upon the programmer to program what was significant and what would the game react to.
We had a relatively basic parser for Heroes Quest, but then Sierra hired Pablo Ganes.
He wasn't there yet.
No, he was. He had a natural language processing background and was master's or PhD, I think, in computer science. And he came in and really beefed up the parser and made it super powerful and could handle complete English sentences and stuff like that. So that's what we had for Quest for Glory 2, but only somewhat used. And by the time we got to Quest for Glory 3, they ran out of memory. So the parser at this point was 1/3 of the entire SCI, and was the big memory hog.
So yeah, we only got to use it for like 3 games, maybe.
One game, one or two games.
One our game, yeah. Maybe 2 games when we had the most sophisticated parsers in the world.
And then they eliminated the parser. So there were actually about 3 reasons for that. One of them is that when they went to 256 color graphics, instead of 16 color graphics, they needed 8 times as much, I guess 4 times the number of bits. But anyway, they needed a lot more memory for the graphics. They also went to higher resolution at the same time, so that was even more. So had to find that from somewhere. So they looked at the biggest single chunk of the interpreter that could be taken out, and that was the parser. Second was that Ken wanted our games to be easily ported to video game systems like the Nintendo, the Sega, and those things don't have keyboards. So therefore we had to get away from the parser, because you can't have a parser without very painfully clicking letter at a time on something. And then, just generally the point and click, they thought that people wanted to go to a simplified interface that would be mouse driven rather than keyboard driven. So the parser went away for multiple simultaneous reasons.
Yeah. Tashtari says, Quest for Glory 5. Elsa? Irana? Katrina? Nawar? Where's the next flying carpet out of here? I'm on my way back to Shapir. Yes. And at that point, yeah, you could have picked her up.
Or that Amazon island I heard about.
But only because No Man isn't an option. Ah, yes. Well, No Man had her heart taken away already. It has been given to Keep On Laughing, and therefore she's just not going to be interested. Sorry.
Yeah, but No Man could love Keep On Laughing.
That's true. To be fair, I also spent a far amount of time trying to get into the cave behind Broggy. I really, really wanted to see what was inside. Yeah, well, or trying to find
had that troll cave in the end game.
The goblin.
The Goblin Underground,
yes,
which was intended to be in the game, and we said we'll never get the game out.
Sujak says, do you know if she had a plan for a game after Conquest of the Longbow?
Yes, she did. There was one of her interviews I read.
Yeah, Arlo says yes, she did, and Brainiac something about Charlemagne possibly. Yes, and well, yes, she did, but Sierra just decided it wasn't going to be. I guess, which had something to do with Sierra.
Cyber Mermaid once had a D&D session where we never left the store.
Ah,
past character creation. They didn't get past character creation.
Oh.
Yeah, there were some games like Traveler was one where you developed, I think, 7 years of your character's back history before you started playing the game, and that could take an hour or more to roll through all the charts and figure out what your character's background was. And I think there were even possibilities of that you would go through all that stage and then the character dies before they start adventuring and never get into the game.
Well, we played the D&D game.
Simulated realism.
Got thrown into a modern world, and we spent most of the game in a hardware store and picking up all these items.
These amazing things.
Items like fishing line. Oh my God! Can you there's a perfect strangling tool, and all these things.
Or we can use it to repair a tent, or all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Another game we were in that was a Champions thing. Yes, that was basically a crossover D&D and Champions. But in the Champions games, we had one where we just had a regular game, and then we had a follow-up game in which we got the bill from the city for all the things that our so-called heroes had destroyed in the course of fighting the bad guys.
Yeah.
And had to work out a deal to pay that back.
You enter the tavern. Sitting next to the goblin is a hooded man with red glowing eyes. His amulet glints with magic as he beckons you closer. Players, tell me more about this goblin. Exactly.
Yes. Well, that's a Chekhov's gun principle. If the goblin is there, must be important, and we'll have to.
Yes. So therefore, as game designers, you can't give incidental information because.
But you have to, because otherwise you don't have a well filled out world. So.
Yeah. Something's up with that bartender who just lets these people in. He let a goblin in for he's got to know something. Yeah.
I read a thing about Nazis, and there was I think it was a gay bar that the guy was talking about that he'd gone into, and was chatting with the bartender, and then this guy comes in, and the bartender gets an expression in his face and just tells the guy, "You've got to leave now," and has his hand on the crowbar that he's got under the counter, and the guy says, "I just want to have a drink." No, you're getting out of here. And so the guy was telling his story. He says, "What just went on there?" And the guy said, "Well, you may not have noticed this, but I've been in this business long enough that I observed that he had tattoos that were neo-Nazi tattoos, and something else that says that he's a neo-Nazi, and it says it seems clear that you just let them come in and have a drink. So what if they're a neo-Nazi? They're a person, and it's fine. But when you do that, the next time they come back with 2 or 3 other friends, and then that's okay until eventually they get a dozen of their friends come in and they have critical mass, and then they start making all kinds of trouble and beating up my regular gay clientele and so on. It says you gotta cut it off at the beginning."
And this is
apropos of something we were just talking about.
You don't let goblins in your bar.
Something's up with the bartender. Just let these people in. So the good bartender says, "Don't let them in the first place."
Yes.
Hi, Valiant. Is he coming and going?
Yeah, I don't know. Conquest of Charlemagne was one of the ideas. Something around Greek myth was in the early stage of planning before Christie said Roberta recommended capitalizing on recent Robin Hood projects. Okay. Interesting. Yes.
I mean, yes. Lori and Christie and I all, and most of the game designers there that were doing creative writing grew up reading Greek myths and Norse myths and so on. Edith Hamilton and all these things, and so.
But thanks for showing up, Valiant. We're glad you showed up. Happy New Year to you.
Yes. Valiant has games about bees and various fun games over on itch.io. And previously did some game tools for us to use for our streams. We haven't used it in Dog's Age. We should start doing some of those again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, word searches. We had quotation searches and such.
Yes. We should play games in this. It depends on how many people show up, but yeah. And Cyber Mermaid said, quote, "You aren't even a wizard yet, kid, unquote. I love that so much. And Arlo says, well, I thought of Aziza as too much of a grandmother or an aunt for that thought to occur to me. I'm glad to know that some people are out there sicker than me. Yeah. Osme says, it'd be interesting.
I haven't seen too many people that wanted to romance Calb, but I'm sure they exist.
Yeah. Well, you just
People
never
love
know.
Calb as a character.
And it'd be interesting to mix a large language model and parser to see what kind of understanding a scene like that would be.
It would probably be pretty horrible. I mean, when ChatGPT first, became popular a year or two ago, that it was just amazing. It was just unbelievable. They could understand stuff, and then they came out with Dolly and could make pictures based on your prompts, and this is so great. And eventually, you start to realize that it's really limited. And that ChatGPT, especially if you try to ask real-world questions of the, they've got AI built into various browsers, and you ask a real-world question, and they give the stupidest answers because they have all the data out there, but they don't have a good way of distinguishing between what's true and what's relevant.
Yes, Ribbons of Attention said, no man could love Keep On Laughing. She could if she ever met Keep On Laughing. The idea when I was creating 5 was the idea that we would bring in all of these characters that you had met along the way and have sort of this vast reunion. But the truth is, when we started writing, well, at any rate, Punny Bones. Punny Bones, who's the person that she's actually in love with. Punny Bones just didn't fit into story-wise, except for his relationship with No Man. So therefore, she makes reference to Punny Bones, but he isn't in the game because, again, he did not further the story, and so therefore he had to be jettisoned because we can't show everything we want to show. Yes.
So her mermaid says, "Gods, years ago I was dreaming of the day when we'd have AI like we have now. Video game characters that could maintain a conversation, a narrator that could respond with context. Not quite where we need it to be, but as unethically as it's being used now. Black." Yeah, so that's the problem is it has to train on vast amounts of data. And that vast amounts of data happens to include paintings, and some of these are, art that's in the public domain, but a lot of it is more recent painters and so on.
And trying to have real language understanding by these things, right now, they're still in an Eliza-like state.
Well, it's way beyond Eliza,
but they're still using the Eliza concept.
Yes.
And it is, they don't really...
They're looking for keywords and so on.
Yeah. And Cyber Mermaid says, as we speak, I've been studying for a certification for Amazon Web Services, and I was struggling with the company providing material until I started talking to my ChatGPT powered bot about it. And the thing is, sometimes ChatGPT will actually give you the answer that the other person is looking for because they don't know either.
Well, that's been for years one of the best programming resources has been something Stack. I forget the name of it now, but effectively there's a site where you can post programming challenges and you can see what other people have done, where all the have the techniques for how do you structure the core of a program and so on, using an AI bot, first of all, can look at that site and I guess I stack something, basically get the answers that other people have come up with, but can also do a similar type of process of going through it's got access to all the computer science literature out there, and it can pull from it and say, okay, here's how you create a linked list. Here's how you do a merge sort. These are known solved problems in computer science. So ChatGPT can actually write some pretty decent code, and possibly better than a lot of junior programmers.
Yes. Instead of having a dictionary of words, instead you could have a dictionary of ideas, and then the
LLM could map the scene parts and parser input to the ideas to make it a more fluid way of interfacing with the scene.
I'm waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of the art out there is getting there where I would be.
Yeah, Midjourney does some beautiful art, and there's flaws. You can spot that it's AI art, but it's still if I draw a stick figure, I'm doing well. So compared to me, it's an artistic genius.
It's giving people that do not necessarily have artistic talent a way of actually having their ideas manifest. So it's actually a miracle drug
and
for
people that are wordsmiths, that can describe a scene well, and then being able to get Dolly or Midjourney to illustrate their scene for them. That's pretty cool. So for fan fiction, great. And the problem is just the ethics of it, that art all has to come from somewhere, and it turns out that it's really thinly modified copies of existing art.
But more to that, and it isn't so much the where did it come from, it's what companies are doing with it. The idea of using the AI to do, for instance, what was it? There was an ad in some magazine like Vogue, and they used an AI to generate the art. That ad cost millions of dollars to put it in that magazine, and they didn't take the time to have a real person.
Yeah, they could have spent $20,000 to get a real painter to do a great job of it, and instead they have art that the hands have six figures and
the
fingers and stuff like that.
Copywriting was Chat GTP. They spent $5 making an ad, and they spent $1,000 marketing it. And everybody who saw that ad basically said this is a piece of AI crap. And that
did not encourage them to buy the product. Yes.
That is not the way to, to do anything.
Our lawyer used to be Sierra's lawyer. Wrote actually an opinion article about a new ruling that he used ChatGPT to help him write it and research. And this is so cool that I can do this now. But there have been other cases of very similar things in which ChatGPT quoted case law, and it turns out the cases it quoted never existed. They were made up, and they pulled it from some article someone else had written that was effectively a fantasy.
Yeah.
ChatGPT just cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality. Yeah. They're also really bad at calculation. So if I've been doing some things that said, okay, what percentage value is this change in this context, and it'll go and pull something from an article that sounds related, and I'll get a 0.88%. I'll say, that doesn't sound right, and then go to the source article. Fortunately, there's a link to it, and say, they were talking about something entirely different. And eventually I got the real answer was 10 to 15%. It just isn't good. It's also not good with time scales. If you say, something about yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and so on, it'll bollocks it up.
Bradyx says, punny. I get why he wasn't there despite the assertions in Quest for Glory 4, but I, for one, would have enjoyed him. I know a lot of people who didn't get the bad humor in Quest for Glory 4 who were fine.
Yeah, we had complaints. Quest for Glory 4, we had complaints about Bunny
That
Rhodes.
was another reason why he kind of got jettisoned along the way. But I liked him. I liked writing for Gnome.
The story idea on that is that he has had his sense of humor stripped from him, and so he is basically doing bad jokes, have no humor behind them, and then eventually gets his humor restored, and his jokes become good.
No,
but his bad. No?
His jokes don't really come any better.
I know, but they're supposed to be.
They're supposed to be. It just better.
The problem is that I was laughing at some of the bad jokes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really come across that well that... I actually had I wrote an article one time about the cliche monster as a D&D monster. And I got it rejected by Dragon Magazine because my article was full of cliches. No. And I said, well, that's the point, is the whole idea was to punish players that are using too many cliches.
Oh.
It just didn't come across. This came across as my article being full of cliches.
Yeah. I wonder if LLMs have already peaked and if the training data is now going to cannibalize other LLM-produced data, and it'll get worse and worse over time. And yeah, it's really likely that's going to happen.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of scientific and medical research basically is meta-research that says, okay, having gone over 17 previous studies, here are the conclusions from it. And there's actually a science fiction story about that in which nobody was doing new studies. And so no new data was being created. And that's kind of what a lot of the world has come to, is that, people are getting rewarded for doing the meta studies more than for doing original studies.
And Ribbons of Intention asks, Stack Overflow?
Stack Overflow, that was it.
Just go with so that was the name of the site that
That's
you were
the name.
talking
Yeah,
about.
Stack Overflow is the name of the website.
Okay.
I couldn't remember the name of it.
All right. And Cyber says, anyways, watch the AI VTuber, in this case, Neurosama. After her latest updates a few months ago, she's really good, although she still has some LLM.
Large language model silliness.
Okay, that's interesting.
So anyway, my point on Stack Overflow is that was what they used to call a human search engine, that you could present a puzzle to and you would get help on what you were doing, or you could simply find out people had solved it previously. So asking ChatGPT is not that much different from asking Stack Overflow.
Oh, well, they said the right way to get any answer
is to give the wrong one?
Is to go on something like your favorite
Stack Overflow.
Your favorite website.
Quora.
And
say something wrong.
Say something wrong, and you will certainly
it will get people quickly correcting you and telling you what's right.
Yes. Somewhat seems like a real bottleneck now is power. So once China releases their cold fusion like they claimed, we're waiting for that cold fusion, believe me. Yes.
Well, it never really is power. I mean, that's obviously a factor, and obviously ChatGPT would not have been possible 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But without the vast amount of data and computing resources we have available now. But having the capability to do something is a long ways different from the creativity and the ability to make something. So games are not that much different than games were 30 years ago, other than, more sophisticated art and music. And not really even the music, because you have all that much capability doesn't mean that people actually have the creative skill to write. It's just like films, You can't, just because you have the technology to make amazing films does not mean that a whole lot of writers and directors have the ability to take advantage of it.
We right now have, at your fingertips, you have the ability to make a game. You could go on, you could get ChatGPT to help write some of the text. You can go on any of those sites that have free download software that will put your game together. And that's been available for quite a few years. But that hasn't, suddenly there hasn't been an eruption of good games out there, because it really does take more than just an idea to make a game.
I spent a lot of time in the past discouraging young people from getting into the game industry and creating their own games and so on, and say, I want to make this game. But I've now come to the conclusion that, yes, they should be making those games. What they shouldn't is have any expectation that they will profit from them. So the idea of making games for sale and having enough people buy them to make your time creating it worthwhile just doesn't happen now. But doing it for your own creative expression and for fun and so that people will enjoy it, that's awesome.
Yes, and you'll learn a lot from it.
So as a person with no budget and no expectation of making money, the idea of using ChatGPT and DALL-E or Midjourney to help you create the assets for your game, and then going through and hand tweaking it, doing good creative writing and so on, you can actually probably make some pretty good games that way, and no reason not to.
As long as you
but you won't make any money from it.
Skill, if that's your talent, background,
yes,
and that really makes a difference.
Whereas if you have an all real human team and spend $5 million, using all the technology properly and making a really awesome game, chances are you still won't make any money and you'll lose the $5 million.
Yeah,
so you're better off spending less and just treating it as a hobby.
And this name stinks says, I miss the old forums and the old searchable posts. Things are moving more towards siloed data, and I don't like that I want to look at a news article and all they're showing me are videos. I do not want a video. I want to be able to extract that data to the points I want and not listen to a bunch of junk. It's just like looking up a recipe online. There is the 3 pages worth of text about how I created this or what we're doing, and then fortunately most of them have a skip to the recipe. I want to skip to the recipe when it comes to an article.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything now is a teaser that the title is, this one trick, or you won't believe, and then you have to read through 3/4 of the article, or they give you a meme picture from the thing, and that picture will actually turn out to be from the last 5% of the article, and you can't jump through.
Yes.
But I was just going to say,
at least it's an article. It's not a stupid video, and you have to watch the damn video to get to the answers.
So for This Name Stinks, siloed data goes against the grain. And I've been bursting to say that.
Oh, really?
My silo is bursting.
I see.
Still believer, the constraints drive creativity, says Ribbons of Attention. That is also certainly true.
We certainly agree with that.
Yes, if given a totally open-ended criteria, make a great game, we're all going to freeze up on that.
Right.
But say, let's make a adventure game about vampires in modern day London, and put a few more constraints on it. Then you can actually get into it.
Yes, define your territory, define your story, define where you're going with it, and then let the story evolve from those constraints. You have to have constraints for all.
And that also depends on your type of designer. That's the way Lori likes to do it. Some people like very structured approach of create an outline, do storyboards, have the whole thing laid out there, know what you're doing, and that certainly is less expensive to make the product if you plan for it first.
No, it isn't. We can say that for sure.
Oh, all right.
Quest for Glory 2 proves it.
Okay, Quest for Glory 2 did cost triple the budget of Quest for Glory 1.
And we had a storyboard. What was that purpose of that storyboard? No, who knows? I don't think anybody...
Just to make sure that the game flow was
there. But nobody could judge that from the storyboard. All we did was waste time actually doing all that artwork. And it didn't bother me, because I had to have the story before we could do the storyboard. But, it's just the thing it is.
Hello Hero says, you need to make games because you love doing it. It's like Leonardo painting. You didn't do it for money. And maybe. I mean, there are also people that make games for a living. And you can do that today.
They had to love it first. Because there's not enough money in it to be worth it. You're not going to get rich, kid. That sort of thing. But you can be creative with it. And that's
why I do it. Articles which randomly have a video from a completely different article in the middle. That's that's a technology issue with the websites they're on.
Not necessarily. They do. A lot of it, it's just the standard procedure. And it's like, I don't want this thing. I want my article. Yeah. So,
Ribbon's next game will take place in one room to save an assets like a play. That has certainly been done, and that's certainly valid.
And it works.
Yeah.
If you do it right. And if you bring some originality to that, because that's the trick. Everybody's done everything. What is your hook that makes the player want to be in there and want to do that? And good luck on it. A locked puzzle room has made some great mystery stories, but for a game, it makes for an interesting game if you have enough behavior that the player can actually do in that locked room. Yes. Did you ever play Slay the Princess? It's almost that well constrained. All right. Well, that's interesting. I have no mouth and I must scream technically takes place in one room. This is true. I've never played the actual game.
I had the game version of that. I never played it either.
No, it was... I mean, I
read the story, of course.
Read the story. It's a classic story. And it's, grotesque and horror.
Was that inspired by Dante's Inferno?
No, not at all.
No?
It's Harlan Ellison.
I know it's Harlan Ellison.
So it was just his thing. And it's gross. And it's it's grim, and I could not understand how anybody could make a game out of that. Well, clearly they could.
I read it long ago. I don't remember it
Oh,
anymore.
I remember it. I mean, it's one of those things ingrained in my brain of, with like some Poe stories that you never forget. I have no mouth and I must scream is definitely on the, in that category of, well, great horror stories.
Speaking of horror, let me out.
Okay, I'll let you out. We're
It's,
running down. We're running down.
We're near the end, but
Yes.
you can keep going for another 20
Okay.
minutes.
All right. Well,
Oh, without me.
no, you've got to come back. Cannot go away. Cannot go away.
Oh,
Any rate. Yes. Well, it is 4:12, so we can start, saying, Happy New Year, Happy Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy everything else that you might celebrate at this time of year. Like, for instance, it's Yule at Here Are You. And so when we see these pictures of these characters, like, the desktop here, they're celebrating a Yule time celebration at the School for Heroes at Hero University. We're having that run through all of our games if we ever get to go for the Wizard Way game, then you'll get to see the way we celebrate Yule here. But I don't know if we will, so we're summer right now, yes. Let's see, I'm going to have a tough decision here. A guy is going to stream his playthrough of King's Quest 766 while wearing a blindfold in about 10 minutes. I see, okay. That's an interesting way to play. Well, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but in Japan, they do make games where the goal is to rape people. There's some sick games out there. Ugh. Well, that's not, is that fun? Well, only if you have a twisted sense of mind. That's the goal of an early Custer's Last Stand game made here in America. Sick people. I mean, horror, to do a good horror movie, you have to be pretty sick, twisted mind too. You have to be able to tap into that sort of thing. No, he put in light. It's light again, but he can barely see us because
we'll probably be full glare now.
Webcam, yeah. Webcam, yeah. All right, so let's actually wrap this up.
One holiday thing I was going to say is Lori and I decided quite a few years ago that instead of doing New Year's resolutions, which nobody ever keeps for a day past that, is we would do New Year's commitments. We would basically come up with things that we committed to do in the next year and do those at New Year. And then at some point they started turning into resolutions, and we didn't keep them any better than the resolutions. But the idea's there. So just a thought.
A horror game is too heavy for me to play for hours, certainly for me, yes. But to be fair, you did a pretty good job of developing your sick mind skills when you wrote some of that dialogue at Quest for Glory 4. Yes, I will grant you. I had a great room in a game that we did, Edath Zima. Game Master of Edath Zima.
Game Master of Edath Zima.
And there was a section of the dungeon that had a sauna in it, and all the people in that area had been turned into zombies, and so therefore you had zombies in a sauna.
The zombie parts coming out.
Yes. Oh, that is not a good combination. One does not want zombies in a sauna. And yes, I had describe the situation and what's going on there. So yeah, I do have a sick, twisted mind in my own way. I will admit that.
We tried to resurrect that game a few years ago, and we have bits and pieces of the design of it. But couldn't find all of it anywhere.
Well, that's because I never write anything down.
No, we did, because we ran that one for a convention.
Well, I know, but mostly it was me. I mean, we had half of it. Half had that's where the you could get a real wish, and people were wishing for what was the answer.
Yeah, they were trying to play Hangman, and they were wishing for what letter to guess next. That was a new in our experience as players that had never encountered the game of Hangman before.
Yes, and had no idea.
So we just assume that people have some degree of common reference with us, but everybody has their own different lives, and especially these days, we have a lot of people that have never do any reading.
Right.
They just
it's
videos
getting more. It's more and more difficult to have shared experiences across a large swath of people. When we were kids, and up until the time we were in college, everybody watched television. We had a common background of experience. Every Thanksgiving you could watch The Wizard of Oz on television and things like that.
And our main social life in our 20s with people that we knew from science fiction, fantasy conventions, and gaming conventions, either at the convention or we'd get together afterwards and do stuff. So we could pretty much assume that everyone there had read The Lord of the Rings. And there were, all these common reference points. Everyone had seen Star Trek. And so you could have a conversation where you just, mention something about City at the Edge of Forever, and people said, "Oh yeah, I get that."
Mm-hmm. Yes. And now it's very hard to have these same common experiences. So that's why we have small groups, like, for instance, this live stream where you get together with people that actually have shared experiences with you. Yep. Let's see. And yeah.
Always have a go-to snark prepared whenever someone streams Shadows of Darkness and reaches the point Katrina has the hero in the dungeon. "Hero, you should be grateful. Most men have to pay for this."
Okay. Okay. I don't know more.
I don't know if that line's in the game, but
all right.
Probably is.
Yeah. I love the Sarses on the holiday special, and of course the rest. I love this. This is just so clever, this T-shirt. And I can't remember who did this one. Do you remember?
I don't know. Did it come from Redbubble?
It was Redbubble at one time. I don't see it on there anymore. I did look for it before we came here. Yeah.
Search.
Yes. Yes. That's interesting because while it's in many ways true that it's harder to have shared experiences, because it's also much easier to find people who have shared your niche experiences than it used to be. That is also true. For us to have, for Corey and I, when we were in, college or high school, we had, we're weirdos. It's hard to find our community. You don't find your community in
there. How about that amazing
No,
line?
there's one that's actually real.
I searched for Quest for Glory, ugly Christmas sweater, and there's a Quest for Glory, ugly Christmas sweater. Showed me one that has the words Quest for Glory on it.
Okay.
Twisted colors.
Well, it's just ugly. Now, I went on to Redbubble to do it, and I wasn't finding it, so it's not gonna.
Yeah, this is kind of close.
Those are not our game.
Oh.
There's some other game.
I thought I saw one of ours.
No. At any rate, let's see. But nowadays, yes, you can find people. You can actually reach people that are your tribe, effectively. Your tribe of game players who play adventure games, or your tribe of science fiction readers. So, in that sense, it's better. When we were working on game conventions, one of the things we tried to come up with ways so that people could find their tribes. So we would have things like ribbons you could wear that says Quest for Glory fan, if that was a thing, which it wasn't at the time, but would have what television shows you like Star Trek fan or Star Wars fan, and so you could say, "Oh, I'm also a Star Wars fan, so therefore I want to talk to you," and just to accommodate the fun.
And of course, Disney commercializes all this and pushes the Disney villains fans, as if all the villains were alike.
Yeah. At the risk of getting political, there's not even a common source of facts anymore. Oh yeah, that's the scary one.
That is true.
Everyone gets their own news, and there's little overlap between factions. Yes, we don't even have a shared reality, let alone a shared commonality.
Now, admittedly, that was something that the 30s, our 30s or so, that we went through. That the idea that people never have had a shared reality, that we all look at the world through filters. And there was an exhibit at the Exploratorium in San Francisco where you look through a screen that has little tiny holes in it, and you can look through different parts of it and see the same background scene. It will look completely different depending on what sort of filter you're looking for. You can use a red filter that makes everything red shade, and that just alters perceptions. So everybody has these mental filters in there that sees the world differently, and that's based on everybody has unique experiences.
Yeah. We
So
just hope
it's never
there's some
really been
common
Yeah.
overlap so that we can actually connect. And it's getting very difficult right now when, one man's facts are another man's fiction.
I mean, Lori and I can't always even agree about what's green and what's teal.
Yeah, really.
And
Arlo says in Jordan, he randomly got assigned a German roommate whose wake-up ringtone on his phone was the Secret of Monkey Island theme. Yes.
we were staying in an Airbnb in Guadalajara. In my middle of the night, my phone starts ringing. And it's off in the distance somewhere. I said, didn't I put that right next to my bed? Where did I leave my phone? And I get up to answer, and then it stops ringing. And it was at that point I realized that somebody else in one of the adjacent apartments had the same ringtone on their phone.
Yeah. Let's see.
So I obviously need a custom ringtone.
On the bright side, I don't think nerd is derogatory anymore. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was proud to be a nerd before it was cool. I even created a club. By club, I mean it ended up just being me, but I tried. Yes.
Yeah, in high school, it was when we were in high school, it was very anti-intellectual. That's probably still true today.
It's true, yes.
But,
Nerds are too intellectual for the hoi polloi, unfortunately.
So we had the jocks and the hippies.
Jocks and the hippies were the major divide. We didn't actually have a class for the nerds in high school.
Right. The smart people and everyone else.
They might have been there, but nobody cared, yes. Let's say it's about time.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
We will see you in 2 weeks at, again, 2 p.m. PST or PDT, whatever's in effect at the time. I think it's PST.
It's probably PST.
And that will be on January the 4th on a Saturday. And we will see you there, and we will continue, and we'll probably play a game next time.
We'll play a game. Actually, I know what game we're going to play.
Go back
First
this
of all,
way too, or?
No, we're going to play What Kind of Hero Are You? Because I found in my archives the test.
The hero test.
The hero test. And we'll start out by having you all take the hero test and see where would you wind up on.
Although without the computer processing, it may be hard to actually get the results. But
no, we can do it as a. Actually, we can do it as a survey type thing. Yeah.
The hero test on the How to Be a Hero website was actually loosely based on Myers-Briggs.
Yes, well, we'll talk about it
and
next
it's all
time.
Personality types and so on. Tells you what your hero type is.
So we'll start out next year trying to see what kind of hero you are, and then we'll sort you into the sorting hat of where you belong, and we'll have a discussion
metaphor there or anything.
Well, yes, we'll have a discussion on whether the sorting hat is an evil thing and things like that.
Slytherin.
Yeah. Happy New Year, everybody! Merry Christmas!
All you Hufflepuffs
all
and
of those things.
Gryffindors and Slytherins and Ravenclaws. Well, wrong world.
Wrong world. See
all you wizards and rogues and paladins and maybe there's fighters too.
And cooks and scientists out there.
Scientists and bards.
And bards. See you next year.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Happy 2025.
Live long and prosper. Yep.